What is the awakening? It's sharing our medieval dream with newcomers. I don't know if everybody knows, but about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I launched a newcomers program. And it wasn't my brainchild. Another chatelaine from Three Mountains actually dreamed it up and designed the logo. But we did a launch in the summits. Every branch received bags and received silk printed logos to make other things. Some branches bought in, some didn't, but then it requires a driver. And when I stepped down, our next chatelaine had other priorities, which is okay because every chatelaine brings their own thing. But unfortunately, the program has kind of died. And part of the reason that that program died was a failing on my part. And I apologize to all the populace for that. That failing on my part was failing to prepare the populace, us, those who play, what to do with newcomers. I spent so much focus on my newcomers that I didn't pay attention to my people. And sitting in our living rooms, talking on Facebook, we all say the right words. Everybody knows how important recruitment is. Everybody knows how important it is to reach a target demographic, to be a part of the next generation of Scadians. But when we get to an event and we get into garb, unfortunately, more often than not, we are busy, we are scheduled, we're on our way somewhere, we're in the middle of a tournament, we're serving the king, we are playing our game. And quite often, when you find yourself standing next to a newcomer, whether you recognize or not that that newcomer is standing there is only the first hurdle. Because knowing what to do with that newcomer is huge. And a lot of people don't know how to do it just on the fly. So here we are. Let's talk about, what do you do when you have a newcomer standing next to you? Step one, every single one of us has a newcomer story. We didn't start when we were born. Some of us were. Some of us grew up in the SCA. And for those people, maybe they don't remember their newcomer story, but they have a first big favorite memory of why did they continue to play in the SCA. They had to take a day where they made a choice that I grew up here, but this was the moment. This was the thing that made me make this mine and not just my parents. So even people who grew up in the SCA have a newcomer story. They have a moment. And unfortunately, as most of us know, you have one chance to make a first impression. And unfortunately, or fortunately, the gods get to decide who is that person that gets to make that first impression. And it's not always Nai. Nai is often also busy and scheduled and off in Timbuktu cooking or whatever it is that Nai is doing. There are a few people out there that do have a natural instinct, and they scoop up those newcomers and they make them feel welcome, special, and appreciated. But unfortunately, that is not the norm. So what do we need to do with them? Number one, notice them. Quite often, newcomers will swing by Gold Key if it's available, because that's where Gate told them to go. So now they're wearing garb. Now they look like all of us. We don't know they're newcomers anymore. Everybody assumes that person's wearing a tunic. They must know the lingo. They must know what's going on. They must have a schedule. They probably have a camp and they know people, but that's not the case. We have to open our eyes and learn to recognize a newcomer, because newcomers aren't always in their civilian clothes. So how do you recognize a newcomer? Well, a newcomer is lost. Usually they're quiet. They're watching. They're standing either by themselves or with a cluster of people. that they're talking amongst themselves. Ideally, if you have a driven chatelaine who has used our newcomer's badge, and a little bit later on, I will bring that up and show you what it looks like. It's an identification system that gives us a way to identify a newcomer, whether it's on a pouch, a little pin that they're wearing, a sash, something that helps mark them as a newcomer. Now, that makes some people uncomfortable, and that has to be okay. Maybe they don't want to be tagged as a newcomer. So you've got to watch for their body language. You've got to watch for where they go. Are they standing still? Because I'll tell you what, Scadians don't stand still. We are going from camp to camp. We are in a tournament. We are serving. And if we are standing still, it's because we've made a space. We have chairs, we have shade, we have a basket by our side with water and entertainment and snacks. Newcomers don't have any of those things because they didn't know to bring them. So you've identified your newcomer. Ah, right there, there's one. That person looks lost. I'm busy. I don't have time. Somebody else will do it. And that's okay if you're busy. But look for someone else that is a Scadian that you can be like, hey, I can't go greet those people. Can you take a minute and make sure that they get connected? So whether you take that initiative yourself to greet them, it's also important to delegate it because maybe you spotted something that nobody else did. And even if it feels like, you know what, I just don't have the time. I just can't do it. And there's nobody around. It's okay to still just walk by and acknowledge them. Hi, I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the SCA. More often than not, newcomers who are wandering in that have bothered to put on garb maybe already know somebody. They may already be connected. And you just taking that extra 30 seconds to welcome them, make sure that they're not lost, give them directions if they need to, maybe point out a tent that says, you know what, I don't have time to keep you company, but Lizette is sitting right over there at the water table. And if you want to get involved, I bet you she's got a job for you, or at least she's got shade to share. These are things that we can do to help them feel like they have a purpose, that they're there, and that we want them there. So now let's say you do have time. I see a newcomer. I'm going to make this my job. Unfortunately, there's two big pit traps that we as Scadians run into when talking to a newcomer. Number one, we go way too deep, way too fast, with way too much information. They don't speak our language. They don't know what the list field is. They don't know what an ERIC is. A&S, are you talking about analog and systems? I don't know. So they nod and they smile, and 90% of what that person says goes over their head. Someone will try to be helpful and go into, oh, here's how you tell the difference between all the coronets. A duke has strawberry leaves, a king and a prince and a baron and a... It's too much because they don't have any dots to connect yet. Absolutely, coronets are royalty. It's part of the dream. You can bow to anyone who has a coronet, and it adds to the ambiance, and it's respectful to whatever it is that they've done to earn that shiny on their head. That is the simple. If they want more, give them nuggets, but don't overwhelm them with too much who to call highness, who to call majesty, who to call duke, who to call... We don't... At this point, they want medieval dreamland. They are just getting a glimpse of our world. It's the romanticized. It's the dragons and the fairies and the kings and the princesses. It's all magical. And we can make that magic scary by adding way too many logistics and rules to remember, and I'm going to screw this up, and if I screw this up, I won't be welcome. So maybe this isn't for me. So that's the first pitfall, is too much information too fast. It's just, let them guide the conversation. What interests you? What brought you here? When they give you the things, oh, I have a friend who makes this cool trim and she told me about this thing and I like to make things. Tell you what, let's wander over to what we call the artisan's village. It's where all the makers are making things. And then you can pass them off. You aren't obligated to stay with that person for the entirety of their event. It's about helping them feel welcome and connecting them with like-minded people. So what is pitfall number 2? Pitfall number 2 is being so worried that they're going to run into negative Nancys, not garb Nazis, people who condemn someone for not bowing or for calling someone sir, even though they don't have a knight, they aren't a knight. Unfortunately, their heart is in the right place, trying to warn of possible pitfalls and negatives that you might run into. And, oh, if anybody does this negative thing, you just don't worry about it. If anybody does this negative thing, your intentions are good, but how about we deal with it if they run into the negative thing? Because I'll tell you what, I've been playing for 7 years now, and all of the horror stories that I hear about garb Nazis and about, I have only run into very few. But I'll tell you, I have more toes and fingers, or more encounters than toes and fingers that I have of people who told me about the negative things that I might run into. So don't color their journey. They may have a negative experience, and it's important for us to be there when they do have a negative experience in order to mitigate that, soften that blow, see it happening and redirect that. But to load them up with all this negative that they might run into right up front, that's a lot of basket to carry before you even get started. Let's talk about the newcomers program so that we can see them. So this is the logo that I wish I could pronounce her name, Katarine of Three Mountains, created for our newcomers. And it has a lot of symbolism in it. It talks about the guiding star, of giving them direction. Which direction do they need to go? It also is the shell. We had historically, let me pull up her words because she has it written super well. This is the badge for the newcomer identification system. She started spreading the program in Three Mountains. Her name is Terra Geis. The symbol consists of a compass star and the scallop shell. The compass star is to symbolize that a newcomer is seeking guidance and direction from every member of the SCA and should be knowledgeable and acting as a guide. Every one of us is a chatelaine. The scallop shell is used because of its historical context. Pilgrims on the El Camino were given a scallop so that they would travel the route and they could request charity and sustenance from abbeys, monasteries, and churches. Enough for a scallop shell full so that they could provide for everyone without causing undue hardship. That's why every one of us is a chatelaine. So not one person is carrying that burden. If we all share in giving little nuggets of joy, a little nugget of the dream, they will walk away awakened. The history is still honored today on the El Camino by those same churches and abbeys, providing areas of rest. The purpose of this system is to allow people to identify newcomers and to allow newcomers to identify people that they can approach. I'm going to interrupt that there and talk about that. Identify people they can approach. So our newcomer has a bag. Our newcomer has a button. Our newcomer has something that shows who they are. so that we can know to pick them out. But how do they know where they can go? Fighters are in the middle of a tournament. They're distracted, they're focused. Am I allowed to approach them? Is now a good time to talk to them? Oh, the royals are up there. They all have these big fancy chairs and coronets and baskets and people. I'm not allowed up there. Oh, there's a shade tent set up over there. Nobody's under it, but it's not mine. So I'm probably not welcome there. Where can I go? Common areas that are obvious to a newcomer are Merchant's Row, but as we know, many of our smaller events maybe don't have a Merchant's Row. So they wander around aimlessly in the field and watch from afar. I fly this symbol outside of my camp. I have a banner. Some people have a bench that has this symbol painted on it. I've seen others that have created a tablecloth that has this symbol on it. Snacks on this table with this symbol. And when that newcomer was given their bag, they were told, look for this symbol because it's an invitation. That symbol tells you that the snacks, the water, the treats on this table are for you. We want you. You are welcome. This bench that has this symbol on it is a place that you can rest even though it's not yours. That camp has the symbol flying outside. I can approach and be like, hello? And somebody inside will say, well, hello, I don't know you. Come on in. Do you have a drink? Are you hungry? I have food. Okay, not everybody will do that. That's what I do. So that's the premise, is that you have the symbol that can be used. If it's on a person, it is a sign that I may be lost. Please be gentle with me and speak modern English. If it's in a place or on a thing, it is an invitation to them that they are welcome here. They are invited here, and this space is for you. These are the pieces of the puzzle that are super important for all of us as Chatelaines to remember. Because when we first got started, we didn't know where to go. We don't know. And unfortunately, the map that our event stewards give our newcomers is full of so much lingo and great. I see that there is rapier on the blue field after court. I wonder if somebody's going to jail. What's court? I don't even know. I don't want to go to court. So even if they have a map, they might need an interpreter, because we as a society have not done a great job of having a version that can be read, interpreted, and used by someone who has no idea. I'm going to give an example. My very first night was a 12th night. I didn't know anybody. I was sitting on the side of a football practice field while my son played football, and I overheard one of the other moms talking about her friend who does this medieval thing. I used to do Ren fairs, not putting them on, always as a paying customer, but I love fantasy. I played Dungeons and Dragons. I was almost always the thief or the cleric. I love castles and beasts and adventure and puzzles. I piqued interest and I interrupted. I apologize for interrupting, but I hear you talking about a thing. Is there any way I can get more information? It sounds like something I'd love. She said she would introduce me to her friend who does it really, really deep. This mom only went once a year to a camping event, but her friend was really, really involved. And so she invited me to a Halloween party to meet her friend so that I could get more information. So now a mom that I don't know invites me to a Halloween party at a stranger's house. But I was a single mom and I was lonely and I wanted something to do. So off I go to this Halloween party. I get to this Halloween party, I meet people I'm told about this big event that's next weekend at a hotel. At that moment in time, I just didn't know anybody. I still didn't get anybody's names. I don't know. I was friendly. I sat, I laughed, I tried to be funny. I borrowed a dress and I went away. So I go to this big event. Happened to be 12th night in Adiantum. It's a big hotel event. I'm wearing a borrowed dress. I know no one. I didn't know what gate was. They kept telling me I'd go through gate. I thought there'd be like arches and like swingy something to like latch. Fortunately, the table said gate, so I figured it out. I was a smart girl. But that's something we need to keep in mind. A lot of people stop by gate. Where's the gate? Anyway, so I show up. I'm wandering around this event, and I am awe-inspired by the decorations. The atmosphere is half of the dream that we set up for our newcomers. It's a lot of extra work, and you don't always have all the people. And some people make choices of, well, you know what? Nobody cares. It's not important. But it's the atmosphere. That's the dream. The banners, the tablecloths, the little touches that show the dream. I'm wandering around, and I'm awe-inspired. I don't know anything. Everybody's wearing crowns, and there's all this fancy garb. I'm just bowing because, well, I saw other people bowing. I don't even know how to bow. I got nothing. Dip to a lower altitude. This is what I've got. And I hear a voice that says, I recognize that dress. And the woman who loaned me the dress ended up being the Baroness of Adiantum. It was Morgan. Teg and Morgan were the couple that the friend at the football field took me to her house to borrow a dress. She scooped me up, handed me a basket, and said, follow me. I apparently was an attendant that day. I carried a basket and I followed her around wherever she went. I was definitely desperate and wide-eyed. But she did all the right things. She was my awakening. She didn't know who I was. She had places to go. She had things to do. But she gave me a job, and she didn't make me feel awkward, and she didn't stop everything and zero the focus in on me because I would have run away. She said, here's a basket. Will you follow me? Yes. Yes, I will. And I scooped up that basket, and that was my moment. That was my awakening to the dream. And for me, I'm service-oriented, so fortunately, that absolutely fed into my love language, which isn't always the case. But that was the moment. You might be the moment for someone, whether it's giving them a basket or taking a second to hand them a embroidery stitch for them to try a couple of stitches. You can undo them later when they're gone. It's okay if they screw it up. But that moment of acceptance, that moment of inclusivity is the awakening. And it takes both sides. That's what's important, is to identify them, don't overwhelm them, and share your dream. And that's pretty much what I've got. I'm happy to answer questions. I would love, just because you're here, I would like to know Clovis and Jimena's newcomer story.
So my newcomer story, my very first event was probably 15 years ago. It was brief. I only remember that I mostly got lost trying to find my cousin where she was camping out in the middle of Sam's Valley in Southern Oregon. That's it. It's not even worth the time. And then I moved up here to Salem, Terra, Pomaria. And that same cousin, who happens to be Baroness Emma of Terra, Pomaria, former Baroness, I lived with her. They went to, long and short of it, and I happened to be going south for the weekend, and she said, oh, you should stop by. You can, you can take the long way, to Corvallis, just stop by. And she threw a dress on me, and she was like, we have to do this fast. So you don't have to pay gate. And she ran me around the entire, it was at a park. It was at Adair Park. So it was a big field and a bunch of tents around the field. And she ran me through all of the tents, introduced me to this guy who said nothing. He was also in a group of like 10 other people. I was like, there's a million people. There's like 10. So that's another story that I'll tell you later. But and then after that, she took me to a couple of other events. And I would say, though, that my moment where everything kind of went click, there are probably two. They both involved silk. One of them was at 12th night with Adiantum, and Her Excellency Lindis, who is Clovis's best friend, took me, and this woman was walking past, and her veil was doing this like floaty thing, and it was amazing. And His Excellency Finn of Dragon's Mist actually did the same thing with Mina. He was like, oh, sure, you can hang out with me. I was totally retinue for half of the evening. And then my other moment was they took me to Ontier Westmore with them. And it was early morning when the breeze was coming in from the coast. I was walking along the front of the camp, and we were camping with Camp Trouble, so it was just silk blowing in the breeze, and it was that's it. That was I was sunk. Anyway, we should have banners, Your Excellency. We should. Yeah, it should be a thing. Anyway, his is much shorter.
Oh, I guess so.
No.
It was many years ago. Actually, Lindis, which people from Terra Pomaria know Lindis is the Baroness, before we stepped up. But her and I have been friends since we were 15. And she just started doing this new hobby where she woke up one day at an SCA event and thought it was really cool and I should check it out too. And so I went, and it was fun, we're hanging out with the partiers and, having a good time. And it was actually in Eagles. And I don't know, for new people, it's a big event that's held in Adiantum in May. And the thing about events in May is often you get the rain showers that come in. And, it'd be beautiful one minute and then just drench you the next. And it did this all weekend. And so, I wasn't really quite sold on the event until evening hit and the sun started to set. And there's a blacksmith on Merchants Row. And Scamp tells this story. I believe that his first event and my first event were the same one, where the blacksmiths, there's 3 of them hammering on the sword, and the sparks would fly off. And the drummers came out and they started beating on their drums, and the blacksmiths were pounding on the sword as it started getting darker and darker. And the belly dancers came out and started dancing with the drums and the sparks flying in the air. And it was just this.
That was your moment.
Yeah, that was my moment. It's like, okay, yeah, I can deal with the rain. I'm going to come back for this. This is awesome. And I was sold ever since then. And, I've been looking for the moment just like that. None of them seem to live up to it, but there have been some really awesome moments. So, that was the one that said, I am coming back.
Because you're not
my personal group and I, after every single event, once you're broke down and everything's in the trailer and you clear sight, we all stop for lunch together and we debrief. And one of the things we do is talk about our moments. And we talk about the good and the bad. What was one moment at this event that reminds you why you played this game? One moment. And the other one is, what's one moment that you learned that maybe you want to do different next time? A lot of times it's, Yeah, we need a new air mattress. That's my negative. Quite often, one of my favorite moments at events is at 1 o'clock in the morning when everything is started to simmer down and I go to the Biffs because I go to bed early so I can get up early and make coffee for everybody who stayed up past 1 o'clock in the morning. But the stars are shining and the tents are glowing and there's bursts of laughter here and there. Standing there is my moment very often. It's that this is where I'm at. Modern civilization is gone. But that moment, and Clovis, your moment where the sun goes down and the sparks and the drummers and the belly dancers, more often than not, a newcomer doesn't see that because they show up at 9 or 10. So they miss morning court with all the pomp and circumstance. And they hang around until about 4:35 because they didn't bring food. They don't have a meal plan. And they leave because it's time for dinner. And they miss evening court, pomp and circumstance. They miss the belly dancers. They don't get to see or experience the silk. They can see the silk. The silk is real. But we have to remember that those moments that keep us playing aren't always visible in this one little moment that we have to show them our dream. And sometimes we have to take initiative and go above and beyond to give them that moment. Find a blacksmith who is working. Find a bard who is playing. Randolph is amazing. He will just sit in camp and be playing his thing. It's like a guitar. It's a magical wooden thing that makes music. Anyway, you can wander through, and if you hear him in the distance, that's a great place to be like, I'm going to take my newcomer to the music, because that could be a moment. And so it's part of that newcomer story that we have to remember that we aren't just being a tour guide. We are helping them find the dream. Thus concludes this Minute with Nye. Thank you so much for participating. I'm glad you're here. Let's keep playing and find our more people.
Does anyone have questions for Nye? You thought you were getting off easy.
I see one. Shanti has a hand up.
I just was curious, like, I'm pretty outgoing and I have a pretty easy time talking to people about whatever. As this part of, for the sergeantry class, I don't have any idea what the sergeantry stuff is. I just know I want to do the lancer stuff because that's horses. Is this part, like, where you have to do the chatelaine stuff to do the sergeantry stuff? And how do I guess, volunteer for that? Is it per event? The role you keep? Is it would you just do it, or?
So Nye.
I'll start. Because I'm going to answer the question from a bigger perspective a little bit. So in the grand scheme of things, how chatelaning our newcomers plays into the sergeantry path is unique to Clovis and Jimena. So what they're going to require for that path is going to be specific and unique to their path. But let's talk a little bit about what it means to be a sergeant. Kingdom-wide, a sergeant is considered somebody that anyone can go to for anything, and you will either know or you will know who to go to find out. And so it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not something you have to schedule. Not everybody wants to schedule to do chatelaine time. It's about being knowledgeable, available, and prepared to handle those questions and to be that person to not leave a newcomer standing there feeling invisible.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons that the newcomer class is included in our scheduled classes, because we don't have a requirement for people to serve as a set chatelaine during our sergeantry trials. But as you said, throughout the Kingdom of Ontir, your sergeants are the people that will know if you don't know, they will know, or they will know who will know. And so that's
So-
exactly it. And
They're the people that knows a guy. They're the hook.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
and also, as Nai was discussing when she was talking about the badge, and the whole purpose of the insignia being designed the way it is, many hands make light work. If all of us are actively working to make everybody feel welcome, it doesn't fall on one person or one household. And it's a little overwhelming. So I came in, like I said, with Baroness Emma. So I had and then they kind of stopped playing for a while, so I had like Lindis and Clovis, and they're lovely people and I love them, and they have many friends, but those friends were not my friends. And it was and their friends also tend to have been playing for like 20 years. So I felt really out of place.
Family.
And so just having other people available to, who are welcoming and friendly and willing to have you over for lunch at their encampment is really helpful in many ways.
Yeah, I'm the first and only person in my family to even start playing, and I grabbed my best friend and told her she was coming with me, and we made a random camp out by ourselves in the boonies at 12th night, or not 12th night, at West War 33, and we just kind of made it happen, and I just started showing up to stuff, and I'm very social, she's not, so I dragged her along and made her socialize, and now she's feeling more comfortable, but I basically asked a lot of questions and was super obnoxious, but she's very introverted and that was not her thing, so I had to help her.
And now you were going to say something?
So I just wanted to touch base a little bit. You bring up a good point, Jimena, about not your people. And when I teach SCA 101 at events, and I have newcomers who have either camped at their first event or that have wandered in through gate, one of the things that I do talk about, although I try very hard not to go to anything negative, the very first thing that I do tell them to do in the SCA isn't picking a name, isn't picking a persona, garb, favorite, isn't any of that. The very first thing is find your people. The SCA is just like the world as a whole. It's just like your family. We all have an Aunt Sheila that we love her, but we don't spend extra time with her on purpose. And so the SCA is so diverse, and there is such a wide range of personalities and interests and play styles. That is the one bit advice that I do give people, is that if the first people you camp with, or you find yourself hanging out under a shelter with not your people, it's okay to say, this was amazing, thank you so much, I'm gonna go see what else I can find. It's okay to keep moving until you find your people, because that's what's gonna keep you coming back, is your people. And your people are here, you just have to find them.
Now,
well, thank you, everybody. I set you free.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nai.
We appreciate you very much.
We do.
Not a problem. Thank you for allowing me to ramble on.